The outpost had been silent for 72 hours. Not destroyed, not overrun. Just silent. No distress beacon, no final message, no trace of life. To the neighboring systems, it was simply one more forgotten colony swallowed by the dark. The Alliance Council voted to move on. They said no help would arrive. It wasn't worth the risk. But the silence reached Earth, and humanity didn't take kindly to silence. Across the orbital stations and fleet docks, old engines rumbled awake. Crews who'd sworn never to fight again found themselves packing for one more journey. Humanity had changed since joining the Galactic Alliance. They'd grown quieter, more restrained, more civilized, as the other species like to call it. But under all the layers of diplomacy and restraint, the same old fire still burned, the instinct to protect their own, no matter the odds. The reports came from the edge of Orion's Veil, a dead zone where communication failed and ships vanished. It was said to be haunted by remnants of the Precursor War, a place where even light seemed afraid to travel. The alien races called it a cursed region. Humanity called it a target. The investigation fleet wasn't large, 3 cruisers and a carrier, but every ship carried something the others didn't. A promise that no human colony would ever be abandoned again. When the fleet entered the Veil, they found wreckage drifting like bones through mist. The colony's outer defense ring had been shattered. The structures on the surface were blackened, melted by something far beyond conventional weapons. It wasn't a war, it was an execution. The Alliance reports called it a tragic loss. The human admiral called it something else, revenge-worthy. In the data fragments recovered from the ruins, they saw the attackers, an ancient race once thought extinct. The Xylan Dominion, long silent since the wars that nearly erased them. But now they had returned, feeding on weak colonies along the border. And in the darkness of the Veil, they had found humanity's outpost unguarded. The recordings showed families running through corridors, soldiers making a last stand, and a final image. An officer staring into the camera before the screen went dark. "If anyone finds this, tell them Earth remembers." That message spread through every colony, every shipyard, every moon base. It wasn't a call for help, it was a challenge. The diplomats begged for restraint, the council urged caution, but the people of Earth didn't wait for permission. Within weeks, the largest fleet in human history assembled above the homeworld. Every ship bore the same insignia, a flame wrapped around a broken chain, and when they launched, the stars trembled. The fleet didn't come to negotiate. They came to remind the galaxy that when humanity is wronged, the universe remembers. Now, deep within the Veil, sensors detect movement, massive energy readings, impossible to identify. The human fleet slows, weapons primed, crews silent. Somewhere in the darkness, the enemy stirs again, and for the first time in centuries, the galaxy prepares to witness what happens when humanity's wrath burns across the stars. The fleet drifted through the Veil like a shadow made of steel. Every ship moved in perfect silence, their lights dimmed, their engines barely humming. The darkness around them wasn't just the absence of light, it felt alive, like it was watching. Static filled the communication lines, and the crews could hear faint whispers echoing through the channels, sounds that didn't belong to any living voice. The science team said it was interference from gravitational distortion. The soldiers didn't buy that. They just called it what it felt like, the ghosts of the dead colony. Inside the command deck of the lead cruiser, the admiral stood at the viewport, eyes fixed on the faint glimmers ahead. Somewhere in that void lay the truth, the reason their people had been erased. Every second spent in the Veil stretched like an eternity. The crew worked in tense silence, knowing that one mistake could reveal their position. The fleet scanners picked up energy trails, faint but consistent, leading toward an abandoned mining world at the edge of the system. It was the same place the last transmission from the colony originated before everything went dark. As the ships closed in, the atmosphere changed. The stars vanished behind them, replaced by a dim haze that shimmered like oil on water. The readings made no sense. Space itself was twisting. Artificial gravity fluctuated, hull temperatures dropped, and the navigation systems began to fail. But they pressed on. Humanity had learned long ago that fear was useless in the face of duty. In the lower decks, engineers worked to stabilize power systems while sharing quiet rumors. Some said the Xylan Dominion wasn't just back, they had evolved. Others believed the Dominion had found something inside the veil, something ancient that even the precursors had feared. Whatever it was, it had given them the strength to wipe out an entire human settlement without leaving survivors. And now, it seemed to be drawing the fleet deeper in. A sudden pulse rippled through space, lighting up every monitor in the command room. It wasn't an attack, more like a signal. The same frequency that had once been used by human distress beacons, only twisted and distorted. Someone, or something, was mimicking their own transmissions. The Admiral ordered all ships to hold position. The crews listened as the signal repeated, faintly at first, then louder, until a voice broke through the static. It was human, weak, fractured, but unmistakably human. No one spoke. The bridge crew stared at each other, each one thinking the same thing. The colony was supposed to be gone, every life lost, every building burned. Yet that voice carried through the void, whispering a single word over and over. "Help!" The Admiral clenched his fists, the sound echoing softly in the silence. "Track the source," he ordered. But deep down, everyone knew they were already walking into a trap. Still, humanity had never turned away from their own, not once. The ships adjusted course, engines glowing faintly as they followed the signal deeper into the storm. The stars disappeared completely now, swallowed by an endless wall of mist. Every radar ping vanished before returning. The crew's heartbeat filled the air like drums before battle. And then, just as they approached the source, the sensors flickered again. Multiple contacts, massive, closing fast. But not Dominion. Not anything the scanners could recognize. The Admiral gave no command to retreat. Humanity had come this far. And as the dark shapes surrounded them, the fleet braced itself for whatever waited in the heart of the veil. The contacts surrounded the fleet in complete silence. They didn't emit light or heat, only faint distortions that shimmered against the void like invisible waves. The scanners tried to map them, but every reading came back wrong, as if the objects weren't truly there, only reflections of something deeper. The Admiral ordered all ships to hold fire until identification was confirmed. The crews waited, watching the darkness twist around them. Then one of the shapes flickered, and for a brief moment, a silhouette appeared. An enormous vessel, its hull pulsing like it was alive. It wasn't Dominion design. The architecture was older, alien in ways that defied logic. Some surfaces bent in impossible angles, others seemed to fade into nothing. The science officer whispered what everyone was thinking. Precursor. The word hung in the air like a curse. For centuries, the precursors were believed to be myths, ancient builders who vanished long before the first human left Earth. And yet, here they were, or what remained of them. The fleet transmitted standard hailing codes, but there was no response, only static. Then, from the largest of the shapes, a new signal emerged. It wasn't a language, not exactly, more like a pattern of tones and pulses that reached deep into the hull, making every surface vibrate. It wasn't meant to be heard, it was meant to be felt. Some of the crew doubled over, clutching their heads, hearing whispers that weren't really there. Others said the message wasn't hostile, it was warning them to leave, but no one could be sure. Meanwhile, in the engineering bay of the carrier Ardent Dawn, a young technician found something strange buried in the ship's data. Hidden beneath the distress signal they'd been following was another layer of code, ancient, encrypted in a way only human systems could produce. Someone had used the colony's beacon to mask a different message entirely. As the technician decrypted it, a chill ran through the room. The file contained coordinates, not of the colony, but of Earth itself. Someone, or something, had been tracking them long before the colony fell. The Admiral listened to the report in silence, then turned back to the viewport. If the Dominion had discovered Earth's location, this mission wasn't just about revenge anymore, it was about survival. The enemy had been baiting them, drawing the fleet away from home deeper into this storm of shadows. And now, the trap was closing. In another part of the fleet, aboard a smaller escort ship, a group of Marines prepared drop pods in case of surface deployment. Among them, a communications officer studied the faint human voice still echoing through their channels. She was convinced it wasn't a recording. The signal carried real-time fluctuations, signs of life, maybe from survivors hidden somewhere below the surface of the dead world. But every time she tried to trace the origin, it moved. Like the source itself was alive, drifting between frequencies, calling them closer. The Admiral weighed the impossible choice: retreat and risk losing whatever survivors remained, or advance and face a power older than recorded history. Humanity had faced extinction before and refused to bend. Yet something about the silence of the veil felt different. It wasn't the emptiness of space, it was the pause before something immense decided to wake. The signal changed again, this time forming a pattern unmistakably human. A distress code used only by Earth's first deep space explorers. It was impossible, older than the Dominion itself. The fleet stared at the screens as the code repeated once more. It read only 2 words: "We're waiting." The fleet hovered on the edge of the unknown, caught between fear and duty. The strange precursor vessels still circled in silence, massive and unmoving, like guardians of something they didn't want disturbed. Every sensor sweep came back distorted. Every signal echoed back with a delay that didn't match physics. The crew began to feel time slip. The clocks between ships no longer agreed. What should have been minutes stretched into hours. Some whispered that the veil itself was alive, bending reality around them. The Admiral didn't believe in legends, but even he felt it, the sense that something enormous was watching. The mysterious message, "We're waiting," played again, fainter now, as if drifting through layers of static and centuries. The communications officer managed to isolate part of its source, the abandoned mining world below. The planet's surface appeared cracked, lifeless, its atmosphere thin and poisonous. But deep beneath it, there was movement. Energy readings too deliberate to be natural. The Admiral gave the order. A small reconnaissance team would descend to investigate. The rest of the fleet would hold orbit and cover them. As the dropship entered the atmosphere, the crew saw flashes beneath the clouds, structures that glowed faintly, pulsing in rhythm with the precursor signal. When they landed, the silence was crushing. The ground was covered in glass-like sand, blackened and fused by extreme heat. The colony ruins were barely recognizable, but human footprints still marked the dust near the entrance of an underground tunnel. Someone had been here recently. Inside, the tunnels twisted through metal and stone, old colony signs mixed with alien carvings that pulsed with faint light, almost breathing. The deeper they went, the stronger the interference became. Their radios cracked, lights flickered, and the ground trembled like the planet itself was shivering. Then they found it. A massive chamber filled with machines that didn't belong to any known species. At its center stood a single figure in a pressure suit, motionless. When the team approached, the suit's lights came alive. The visor flickered, showing a human face, pale and tired. His voice was weak, barely a whisper through the comms. "You shouldn't have come," he said. "It's not the Dominion. They woke it." Before they could ask what he meant, the ground erupted with a low rumble, and the walls lit up with thousands of lines of blue light stretching in every direction. The machines began to hum, a deep vibration that made the air feel heavy. Above, in orbit, the fleet detected a sudden energy surge from the planet's core. The precursor ships moved for the first time, forming a massive ring around the human fleet. Their hulls glowed with blinding light, each pulse synchronized with the planet below. The science teams shouted readings that made no sense: gravitational distortions, spiking, matter phasing in and out of existence. The admiral demanded to know what was happening, but no one could answer. Down below, the survivor raised his hand toward the walls. "It's a weapon," he said. "Not made for war, made to erase. They called it the Veil." His voice cracked as the chamber shook harder. "They thought it was dormant. It's not." The last transmission from the surface came through broken and fading. The admiral heard only fragments. Awake, spreading, not just here. And then the feed went dark. The planet below began to glow from within, light spilling through its cracks like molten fire. The precursor ships turned toward the human fleet, and in that frozen moment of silence everyone knew whatever was waking beneath the surface wasn't just ancient. It was unstoppable. The light from the planet spread across the void, turning the darkness of the veil into a blinding sea of energy. Every sensor aboard the human fleet went white with overload warnings. Communication channels filled with static. For a moment, no one could tell if the planet was breaking apart or coming alive. The admiral stood at the center of the bridge, the glow reflecting in his eyes. This wasn't a weapon being fired. It was a signal being sent. But to who? The science officer shouted over the alarms. "The energy's not escaping into space. It's tunneling through subspace layers." That meant it wasn't limited to this system. Whatever was waking here was calling something far beyond the veil. The realization hit everyone at once. This wasn't the Dominion's trap. Humanity had walked into something ancient and much bigger. The Dominion might have been nothing more than a pawn, another species that had stumbled across this power and vanished because of it. Then, in the middle of the chaos, the precursor ships suddenly powered down. Their glowing hulls dimmed, their positions locked into perfect formation. From them, a single transmission burst through the noise. It wasn't in any known tongue, but hidden within the tones was a recognizable rhythm, Earth's old emergency code repeated 3 times. The computers began translating the embedded signal, and what emerged froze the entire bridge. It was human. Not a distress call this time, but a command. "Do not fire, they're protecting us." The message made no sense. The fleet's sensors showed no human presence aboard those ancient ships, yet the data signature in the transmission was authentic, coded from a fleet registry that hadn't existed for over 200 years. The admiral ordered a scan for any possible human sources, but before the sweep finished, another burst of energy erupted from the planet. This time it wasn't light, it was sound, a deep, rolling vibration that tore through every ship's hull like a heartbeat. The precursor ships shifted formation, opening what looked like a passageway, a corridor of light stretching directly toward the human fleet. Half the command crew argued to retreat, but the admiral hesitated. The message had been unmistakably human. And if someone was alive down there, or something human-built had survived, it could hold answers to the colony's destruction, to the veil itself. But before a decision could be made, a new contact appeared on long-range scans, an enormous fleet approaching fast. Their drive signatures were familiar. Dominion, tens of thousands of ships, closing in like a tidal wave. The Dominion had followed the humans into the veil, drawn by the same signal. But they weren't coming to investigate. They were coming to take it. The human fleet now stood between 2 impossible forces, the ancient precursor guardians and the advancing Dominion armada. The admiral watched as the energy from the planet pulsed faster, almost frantic, reacting to the incoming fleet. For the first time, it felt like the veil wasn't just defending something. It was afraid. A faint voice crackled through the comms again, fragmented but desperate. "If they reach the core, everything ends. Not just here. Everywhere." The line went silent, and the crew looked to their admiral. He gave the only order he could. "All ships, prepare for contact." And as the stars warped under the pressure of colliding forces, humanity's fleet braced for the moment when the entire galaxy would finally learn what the Veil truly was, and why it was never meant to be found. The Dominion fleet came out of warp in a blaze of light, their formation stretching across the stars like a wall of fire. The human ships turned to face them, engines burning bright, weapons charged. Between them, the ancient precursor vessels floated motionless, the ring of light still pulsing around the planet's surface. No one fired. Not yet. Space hung silent, the tension thicker than armor plating. Everyone knew that one wrong move would decide the fate of more than just this system. It could ignite something far larger. The first Dominion ship opened fire. Blue energy lanced across the void, striking one of the precursor vessels. The explosion didn't come. Instead, the alien ship absorbed the blast, its hull rippling like water. Then it unleashed something no one had seen before. Light curved, folded, and shattered, tearing the Dominion ship apart without sound or flame. In seconds, the battle began. Human ships moved to intercept the Dominion wave, firing railguns and plasma bursts that cut through the dark. The fleet fought with precision and fury, but the Dominion's numbers were overwhelming. For every enemy destroyed, 3 more took its place. The Admiral's command ship shuddered as impacts struck the hull, but he didn't flinch. His focus was on the planet below. The readings showed that the Veil's energy core was reaching a critical state. If it detonated, it wouldn't just destroy the system, it could erase everything in subspace range, maybe the entire sector. The communications officer broke through the static. "Sir, we've re-established partial contact with the surface." The survivor's voice returned, weaker than before. "You have to shut it down. The Veil isn't a weapon, it's a fail-safe. It's trying to seal a breach. Something on the other side is pushing through." The Admiral's mind raced. The Dominion thought the Veil was a superweapon. They were trying to capture it. But if they reached the core, they wouldn't unleash a weapon. They'd open a door. And whatever waited behind it wasn't meant to exist in this galaxy. He gave the order. "All ships, form a perimeter around the planet. Protect the core at all costs." The precursor vessels shifted instantly, aligning with the human fleet as if understanding the plan. For a brief moment, species separated by eons fought side by side. Humanity and the ghosts of the precursors stood as one against the Dominion tide. As the Dominion's main dreadnought approached, charging its superweapon, the Admiral made his choice. He ordered his ship to dive directly into the energy stream linking the precursor ring to the planet. The bridge shook violently, alarms blaring. "If we can't stop it," he said, "we'll finish it our way." The ship's reactor overloaded, fusing with the Veil's power source. Light consumed the sky, folding time and gravity into one blinding storm. Dominion ships vanished, torn apart by the surge. The precursor vessels disintegrated, their energy scattering like sparks across the stars. The Veil closed, sealing the breach. And then, silence. When the light faded, only a handful of human ships remained. The planet below was gone, replaced by a calm sphere of blue light orbiting quietly. Scanners picked up no life signs, no Dominion fleets, no signals at all. But then, a transmission echoed through the void, clear, steady, and unmistakably human. "This is Earth Command. We received your signal. But you shouldn't have. The fleet you're hailing was lost over a century ago." And as the surviving crews stared at their screens in stunned silence, they realized the truth. The Veil hadn't just closed space. It had folded time. Humanity's wrath had saved the galaxy. But at a cost no one could yet comprehend. The surviving ships floated in silence, orbiting the glowing sphere that had once been the planet. The stars around them were unfamiliar. The constellations shifted. Even the nearest pulsars were gone from the maps. It took hours before the fleet's remaining systems stabilized, long enough for the crews to realize the truth. They weren't just far from home. They were far from their own time. The readings confirmed it. The fleet had been pushed forward more than 100 years. Everyone they had known, everything they had fought to protect, was already history. The admiral sat alone on the dim bridge, listening to the quiet hum of the ship. Earth Command's message played again through the comms, steady but distant, like a voice from a dream. If you can hear this, you are part of a lost fleet. Your sacrifice sealed the veil. Humanity remembers. He stared at the glowing sphere below, the final resting place of thousands who had followed him into the dark. It wasn't a planet anymore. It was a monument. The data scans revealed something strange about it. The energy field was stable, self-sustaining, and inside it pulsed a faint human biosignature. Somehow, life had survived within the light. The communications officer approached quietly. "Sir, Earth Command is requesting we identify ourselves. What should I say?" The admiral didn't answer right away. He thought about the long road that had brought them here, the colony's silence, the Dominion's greed, the ancient warnings buried in the veil. Humanity had faced extinction more than once, and yet here they were again, scarred, changed, but still alive. "Tell them," he said softly, "we're home. Just late." Over the next few days, the fleet re-established stable contact with the modern alliance. The galaxy had changed, borders shifted, wars ended, new allies formed. The Dominion was gone, wiped from existence by forces no one fully understood. The story of the Veil had become a legend, a tale of sacrifice told to remind future generations why humanity had earned its place among the stars. And now, the legends were answering back. When the first Earth ship of the new era arrived to escort the survivors home, the admiral stood at the viewport one last time. The blue sphere still glowed beneath them, calm and unbroken. The scientists called it a stabilized singularity, but to the admiral it looked like something else. Peace. He knew the veil hadn't been just a weapon or a warning. It had been a test, a final challenge to see if humanity could stand against fear and still choose hope. As the fleet turned toward the light of distant Earth, the comms filled with voices, young, curious, full of awe. To them, the lost fleet wasn't just survivors. They were proof that humanity's strength had never come from its weapons, but from its will to protect what mattered, no matter the cost. The admiral watched as the veil faded behind them, its light slowly blending with the stars. "Never again forgotten," he whispered, a quiet promise carried across the dark. And somewhere in that silence, as the fleet sailed home through the future they had saved, it almost felt like the universe whispered back. Humanity had endured, humanity had remembered, and in the end, that was enough.